Now, what I just did here, spitting this dinosaur out. I'm trying to think of a way to tie this into the video topic, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So let's just violently switch. Now, I don't know what you're gonna do during this intro right now, but I know what I need to do. What I need to do is kind of piece my dignity back together after spitting a dinosaur at you guys. A clanfear, spitting a clanfear at you guys. There we go. Tied it in. And for those of you who may not know, Littletweaks is a series I've been working on, kind of just trying to give you ideas for not straightforward modding, but little edits you can do to your game, primarily through tesvedit, sometimes the Skyrim CK, in making Skyrim more of an enjoyable game for you, covering areas that mods may not. And I've been thinking about this for a long time, but not really sure how to make a video on it, because if someone were to ask me, like, how do I make Skyrim more difficult? I guess you'd have to clarify what you mean by difficult, in the sense that difficulty means a lot of different things to a lot of people. And really, look, Bethesda did not set you up for success when it comes to trying to mod your game to be enjoyably difficult. So maybe I just need to get a rant out of the way really quick so I can explain why I think this is so challenging to do. So ever since Fallout 76 came out, I have been watching an unhealthy amount of Bethesda bashing videos. And listen, I'm not gonna turn this into another rant. Bopping Bethesda. Listen, I love Bethesda as a game developer. It's just some of the game design decisions that were present in this game that I thought were kind of creepy. I feel like the chickens came home to roost in Fallout 76. Now, I understand there was a lot more going on in that game that led to the disaster that kind of happened surrounding the release, bugs and all that. However, if we're talking just like vanilla Skyrim gameplay, if I had a daughter and she did something bad, what would I say to her? Michaela, your dress is on backwards. That's not how we put it on. Okay, now that I've thoroughly scared you away, I think the biggest issue with Skyrim, their commitment to simplicity, and I think what they want is an elegant game. However, just reducing features does not make something elegant. For instance, a Ferrari is not elegant because all you need to use to get to the store is the steering wheel, brake and gas pedal, and the shifter. In fact, I would argue the complexity is what makes it elegant. In contrast, the removal of features from about Daggerfall until now, especially the ones directly related to combat, have slowly made combat and difficulty easier and more boring. You know, casual gamer or not, who's put out by the fact that you can specialize in long blade or short blade? Like, do we think that low of ourselves that having to put perks into, say, katanas somehow is going to make things more unorganized and too complex? Like, that's a pretty simple thing in my opinion. Quick aside, this video actually wonderfully summarizes what has become of Elder Scrolls from the very first one until now, so I'll leave a link in the description. Another ingredient of this cocktail of things working against you is the lack of a robust combat system in Skyrim. Now, I don't play For Honor myself, and I'm sure it's got its own problems. However, you can see even just from watching a video like this, the combat system is light years ahead of Skyrim's. And it isn't that I need Skyrim's combat to be like this. In fact, I think if you imported this style into Skyrim, it would make the game much worse. But with combat in Skyrim, you literally have nothing to think about but blocking and drinking potions. Okay, so that might be a little overstated, but enemy attributes and your own attributes have been simplified to such a degree that when it comes to magic, it's almost like you're asking, what color do I want to kill you with? So to summarize this and bring this back to what this has to do with you modding and combat and difficulty, things have been combined and simplified, but nothing has been added. Enemies aren't any smarter, resistances don't really exist anymore in meaningful ways. Outside of enchantments and armor ratings, equipment doesn't really have any effects. Yourself and enemies have really shallow combat movement options. So many more things that would just make this video unnecessarily long. But to me, proof that the streamlining process has gone awry is the fact that the difficulty setting only adjusts the amount of damage enemies do. Really, I just want you to understand where you're starting from. And sometimes things bother you in Skyrim, but you can't really identify what it is. And just knowing at core what's wrong with the game helps you to identify those things later and then edit or mod your game accordingly. So what do? Personally, I think Skyrim is at its best from a difficulty standpoint when you have a lot of diversity in your game. So, the first thing I would do, honestly, is just add a ton of red guards into the game.
Good evening.
Listen, can you blame me? I saw the opportunity and I took it. What I actually mean is, in my opinion, the more options you invest in the game for both you and NPCs, the more kind of accidentally challenging the game will become, because I do feel like there is a structure in the game for variety. So that's where I'm coming from. So, and also, obviously this is just my opinion. There are many ways to do this. I'm just gonna offer you mine. Okay, so I feel kind of silly saying this. This is like my favorite guide really to anything, period, in my whole life. Okay, just kidding. On the Skyrim mod subreddit, basically it's a way to tweak your game's difficulty using Skytweak. If you use Special Edition, I'll post the link in the description. Apparently you can get Skytweak to work on Special Edition. But yes, pretty much everything in this guide I agree with. And also you don't necessarily have to make all the changes this guide suggests, but it's wonderful. But I'm putting this at the beginning of my suggestion just because I feel like this creates a wonderful baseline for everything else. And it'll help you gauge how to make adjustments in other mods if you choose to do that based on essentially your game settings. Now, I'm putting this on here not necessarily to tell you to install Wildcat. You definitely can, it's a great mod. But if you don't use Wildcat or you use another mod that is in place of Wildcat, there is something that Wildcat does that I feel like contributes greatly to making Skyrim more difficult that you can probably integrate into any mod list. And that is the extensive work Ian and I did on the combat styles. So if you want, you can actually take the ESP and delete every header except for combat style, and you will have a heavily modified you'll have a heavily modified array of combat styles, basically, which controls enemy combat behavior if you don't know what that is. Actually, wow, completely forgot. The game settings header, I would preserve all of those changes as well. And basically, I have an ESP that I renamed Wild Kitty that just has game settings changes and the combat style changes. And speaking of combat styles, now bear with me for a second, I'm gonna make this as concise as I can. Under the combat style header in tesvedit, if you open it up and check out something like, in this case, CS Warlock, look how many records reference it. Now that's not a bad thing. However, that does mean a whole lot of enemies in the game use the exact same combat style. Again, there is nothing wrong with that, but I think we know by this point that you would much rather mod Skyrim than play it, right? So if you like playing Skyrim, this part is not for you. But really quickly, if you load up the CK, you can just load up Skyrim update and then click on OK. Click yes to all and ignore on everything. Once it's loaded, you can scroll to the bottom and click all. If you know the combat style name, you can just type in CS. Make sure you type quick, because if you hit a common letter like A or C too slow, it's going to load everything in the CK that starts with C. So yeah, I made this mistake here. Anyway, since we talked about it, I picked CS Warlock. If you double click that, you can edit the values here. And if you need a reference as to what each value does, just Google Skyrim CK combat styles. First result is everything you need. Just make sure to rename it at the top if you're creating a new combat style. Otherwise, you'll overwrite the existing one. So now it'll be in your load order and you can put it wherever you want, but now in Test 5 Edit or even Mater Smash, you can add that combat style to any NPC. Now the right thing to do is to select an NPC record and choose copy as overwrite into, and then you would create a new ESP file. What I have done is the dumb way, and I edit the ESPs directly, so my ESPs are stuck. You just want to make sure that whatever ESP you're editing has that new file as a master, so just right click it and then click add masters. Like so, and I promise we're almost done with this. Listen, I'm not assuming that anyone watching this is skilled in the CK, which is totally fine. I just want to make sure everybody can do this. And all that's left would be to scroll down to the category of combat style, and then if you single click and then wait a second, it'll let you do something. Type in whatever you named your combat style, and there you go. You can also batch edit by selecting multiple records, and whatever you change within the record, right click it and then click copy to the selected records, and then every record you have selected will change. So in a nutshell,
Wait, are you gonna tell them the truth?
The truth about what?
The black hole of editing that you're opening up.
Actually, you know, dirty secret, this type of editing that I've been doing over the course of like 2 years is basically the reason why I'll never switch to special edition. I'm not not ready to put in 2 more years. Anyways.
Please don't.
Now here's a very small one. If you've already elected not to use the mod Advanced Adversary Encounters, in the ESP under the section perk, you can actually you could delete every header and just keep that perk section, because what it does is it gives certain enemy types certain weapon resistances. And if you find them too extreme or not extreme enough, right on the float point, that's what determines how much percentage of total damage you would do. So 1 would be vanilla damage or whatever your damage setting is, and in this case 0.1 would be 10% of the damage that you would usually do. Now, in keeping with the diversity thing I've had going in this video, the mod Revenge of the Enemies adds much needed enemy diversity in terms of abilities. The only problem is, man, at least in the version I use, which was the older version, it adds some ridiculously imbalanced abilities to enemies. But as you may have noticed, this video is all about editing ESPs and changing things to fit your game. Exactly the same, obviously, for that mod too. And in fact, the vampires here are the result of Revenge of the Enemies. Now, just so you know the kind of naughty stuff we're talking about, this Dragon Priest was added to the Immune Mehrunes Razor faction. And so was his Forsworn Briarheart. Also, see that thing that says weapon speed up? This is the carnage that perk will unleash on your game. But in the pursuit of making your game difficult and fun, things like that can always be edited out. Well, almost always. So don't get turned off by something wildly imbalanced like that, because you can always salvage bits and pieces of mods. And to be fair to mod authors, I mean, everybody's game is so wildly different, you know, how could they balance it around yours? So this has been a little scatterbrained, but I hope you understand the point I'm trying to make is it's going to take a lot of little things to make your game difficult but not cheap. And I glossed over it in the beginning, but the bit about Wildcat and the game settings and combat styles, and then the guide I posted, it's really important to make sure that, like, foundationally your game has a good structure so that you know how to balance around that. You could, yeah, just think of it as like the sun for which all of your other little things revolve around. And I cannot stress enough the importance of using ACES so that all of your NPC records are contained in one master file, and you can easily edit or add patches, which is the right way to do it. Don't be like me. Add patches so that you can adjust NPC records. You can make them stronger, you can make them weaker, you can delete and add stuff, add perks. Just as far as balancing goes, I feel like ACES is probably the single most important mod to use. So, and as always, thank you so much, truly. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped even a little. I didn't really get to touch on things to do to your own character so that you can kind of match the buffness of the enemies. I'll get to that in another video. But if you have anything that you've done to make your game balance, please share it. I would love to hear it. And I'm addicted to modding, so please give me more things to do, please. Alright, love you guys. Bye-bye.